Everyone, and welcome to the Curious Calculator. Today we're going to be going over factoring quadratics where a is not equal to 1. Alright, so I'm going to be going through a few different methods here. First, I'm going to do the AC method, and then I'll do the box method, and then the slip and slide method. Alright, so let's get started here. So the quadratic we're going to be looking at is 8x squared minus 10x minus 12. And now to kind of see why this is called the AC method, let's look at the general form of a quadratic, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the coefficient a and this last term here c and multiplying them together and getting some product, and then we're going to try and find two numbers that when we multiply them together we get that product a times c, and when we add them together we get the coefficient here b. So let's go ahead and see that in practice. Looking at this one, let's see. The first thing that we want to do when factoring any quadratic is try to take out the greatest common factor. That'll be our first step. And so for this one, we have a greatest common factor here of 2. So let's go ahead and pull out that 2. So we have 2 times 4x squared minus 10, minus 5x minus 6. And so now we want to use the AC method. So we're going to be looking at this 4, our A, and then we're going to multiply that by the negative 6 here, our C. So 4 times negative 6 gives us negative 24. And now we want to find two numbers that when we multiply them together, we get negative 24. And when we add them together, we get negative 5. Two numbers that would work would be negative 8 and positive 3, because negative 8 times 3 is negative 24, and negative 8 plus 3 is going to be negative 5. So now we want to go ahead and rewrite this like so. So 2 times 4x squared, we leave that alone. Then minus 8x plus 3x minus 6. So we split up that middle term into these two terms here, and notice that negative 8x plus 3x is the same thing as negative 5x. So from this point we want to do factoring by grouping. So let's see here, we have 2 times, we can pull out from these first two terms here a 4x. So 4x, and then we'll have x minus 2. And then we can pull out a positive 3 from the next two terms. 3 times x minus 2. And then we're going to finish off the factoring by grouping. Let's see here, 4x plus 3 times x minus 2. And that right there will be our final answer. And if you're a little confused here by what I just did with the factoring by grouping, I will have a separate video on factoring by grouping. Alright, so now we finish up with the AC method. Now we want to do the box method. We're going to be looking at the same quadratic here, 8x squared minus 10x minus 12. And again, the first thing we want to do is take out that greatest common factor, which in this case is 2. And that's very important for when doing the box method, because if we do not take out the greatest common factor when doing the box method will not work out how we want it to. Okay, so after we do that, we're going to draw out a little box here, like so. And in the top left corner of the box, we want to write out our first term here, the 4x squared. In the bottom right corner of the box, we want to write our last term, the negative 6. And now what we want to do is we want to multiply these two together. So 4x squared times negative 6 gives us negative 24x squared. And now, similar to the AC method, we want to find two numbers that when we multiply them together, we get this negative 24x squared. And when we add them together, we get negative 5x. Two numbers that we can use are negative 8x and positive 3x. Because, let's see here, negative 8x and 3x. Negative 8x times 3x will be negative 24x squared, and negative 8x plus 3x will be negative 5x. And now we're going to go ahead and fill in the rest of our little box here with these values. It doesn't matter where you put the 3x, whether it's here or here, and vice versa with the negative 8x. It will work out either way. So let's go ahead and write the 3x here and the negative 8x here. All right, and now that we have our box here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to look at the rows here and the columns here, and taking out the greatest common factor from each of those and writing them off to the side. So let's go ahead and get started here. Looking at this first row, we can take out a greatest common factor of x. And because they're both positive, the greatest common factor I'm going to take out will be positive. Looking at this next row, we have negative 8x and negative 6. The greatest common factor they share is going to be a negative 2. And when we have a row such as this, or a column where both of our values in the boxes are negative, we want to take out a negative greatest common factor. And so we're going to take out a negative 2. And looking at this column here, we have a positive value and a negative value. Whenever we have a positive value and a negative value, we want to take out a positive greatest common factor. And in this case, that will be a 4x. And then right here in our last column, we have 3x and a negative 6x. Again, we want to take out a positive greatest common factor because we have one that is positive and one that is negative. The only time we're taking out a negative greatest common factor is when both of the values are negative. So let's go ahead and take out that positive 3. All right, so now we've finished up with this part, and we're going to write our answer below. But let's keep in mind this 2 that we originally factored out. So we're going to start with that, and then that's going to be times x minus 2 times 4x plus 3. And that right there will be our final answer. All right, so that wraps up with the box method, and now we're going to move on to our last method, the slip and slide method. Slip and slide. All right, so we're going to be using the same quadratic here, 8x squared minus 10x minus 12. Again, the first thing that we want to do is take out the greatest common factor, which is 2. So we're going to do 2 times 4x squared minus 5x minus 6. And with the slip and slide method, what we're going to want to do is we're going to kind of want to look at this coefficient here, the leading coefficient, and imagine kind of slipping it over here to the very last term and multiplying them together. So when we do that, we're going to get 2, we're going to have x squared minus 5x, and then 4 times negative 6 will be negative 24. And now at this point we want to factor as we normally would. So this will be 2 times, factor this normally, we'll have x minus 8 and x plus 3. Because negative 8 times 3 gives us that negative 24, and negative 8 plus 3 gives us that negative 5 right there. And now we've got to be careful here because we've got to remember that we slipped this 4 over here to the n. So to undo what we did at the beginning, we're going to divide each of these values here by 4. And that will result in, let's see, 2 times x minus, well, 8 divided by 4 will be 2. And then for this one, if we notice that we can't do it cleanly, this is where, well, the slide part comes in of the slip and slide method. And we only do this whenever it does not divide in cleanly like so. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of slide this 4 back over in front of this x. So that's going to become 4x plus 3. And that right there will be our final answer. And I'd like to wrap up today's video with a little fun fact from philosophy. Did you know that the philosopher Aristotle is largely credited as being the father of logic? This is not necessarily because he was the first to use logic, but rather because he was the first to do a rigorous systematic study of logic. And he is largely credited with something that we use in logic known as syllogism.